Hello and welcome. Off the northern reaches of Cape Far, where the cold waters of the Lazar principalities churn against jagged rocks, an island rises from the mist. The locals call it Dreadhold, a fortress that has become synonymous with permanent imprisonment and absolute security. The island was first established by Can the Conqueror as a place for exiling deposed rulers or courtiers who had fallen from favor. As the kingdom of Galifar rose from these conquests, as civilization spread across Corvair, and the population swelled into millions, the early Galifar kings recognized they needed something more than an exile colony. They needed a prison that could contain the most dangerous individuals in all of Corvair. You need to understand what Dreadhold represents before you can grasp the weight of the souls imprisoned within its walls. This facility does not exist for rehabilitation. No prisoner walks through its gates expecting to someday breathe free air again. When the nations of Corvair send someone to Dreadhold, they make a collective statement. This individual is too important to execute and too dangerous to be left free. These are criminals who cannot be held in conventional prisons, whose escape would threaten not just individuals, but entire populations. House Kundarak operates Dreadhold, using their mark of warding to maintain security systems that represent the pinnacle of their craft. The dwarves of this dragon-marked house built their reputation on security, on creating locks that defied picking, wards that resisted dispelling, vaults that protected the most valuable treasures in Corvair. When they took control of Dreadhold and transformed it into the ultimate prison, they brought centuries of expertise in containment and protection. Most dwarves consider a tour of duty at Dreadhold to be tantamount to exile. But the bearers of the mark of warding make sure the prison stays secure despite the bleakness of the place. The construction demonstrates the house's commitment to absolute security. A massive fortress dominates the island, built from the strange black stone of the cliffs and hidden by a clinging shroud of dark mists. Based on what historians and planar scholars have discovered, the prison sits in a manifest zone to Lamania, the Twilight Forest. This planar connection serves a crucial purpose. The stone in such zones is denser than usual and cannot be penetrated by scrying or teleportation. From the very foundation, Dreadhold was designed to resist magical intrusion and escape. The walls incorporate multiple layers of protection. Dimensional anchors prevent teleportation throughout the facility. A permanent anti-magic field covers critical areas, revealing invisible intruders and disrupting magical disguises. The architecture creates redundancies upon redundancies, ensuring that if one security measure fails, others stand ready behind it. The only entrance is a single gate, heavily fortified and constantly monitored. Those who pass through must walk down a hallway to an inner gate, where elite guards keep the area under constant observation. House Kundarak maintains sovereign control over the island as a stronghold of their house. The prison holds the most dangerous criminals from across the continent, including numerous individuals sent here for wartime atrocities committed during the last war. While the house operates the facility, they work within a framework that involves the nations of Corvair. Sending someone to Dreadhold requires more than a simple conviction. It represents a determination that no other prison can adequately contain this particular threat. The physical layout of Dreadhold reflects its purpose as a facility for permanent containment. The outer walls rise impressively from the rocky island surface, constructed from that dense black stone that resists both mundane and magical assault. Guard towers punctuate these walls at regular intervals, each one manned by soldiers who have sworn oaths of service to House Kundarak. These guards undergo extensive training to recognize signs of mental compulsion, to resist emotional manipulation, to maintain vigilance even when prisoners employ psychological tactics to wear down their resolve. The interior of Dreadhold is as desolate as the island itself. It is built using the smooth, dark stone of the cliffs, and the design is grim and functional. The only decorations are the seals of House Kundarak and the Kingdom of Galifar. The upper levels are illuminated by ever-bright lanterns, but there are no lights beneath the surface. The guards rely on dark vision, and the prisoners in the deep cells are left in darkness. Within those outer walls lies a complex divided into distinct wards, each designed for different categories of prisoners and different levels of threat. Understanding these wards proves essential to understanding the inmates themselves, because the decision of which ward receives a prisoner reveals what the authorities fear most about them. The Red Ward serves as the primary prison complex where most prisoners are held. The Red Yard is designed to hold up to 300 prisoners and currently averages 200. Unlike the isolation cells found elsewhere in the facility, the Red Ward keeps prisoners 2 to a cell. They spend most of their time confined, but are usually brought out in 4-hour shifts for work duty and recreation. Work typically involves small groups chained together, mining below Dreadhold. Rumors persist that this mining produces Kyber dragon shards, extracted from deep chasms beneath the island. Depending on their talents, prisoners might perform other forms of menial or even skilled labor. A workshop in the ward allows trusted prisoners to practice their trades. Any large work detail is accompanied by a wand guard, an elite guard, 2 guards, a scout, and a slaughterstone eviscerator. These constructs serve as tireless guardians that cannot be bribed or deceived. Trusted prisoners in the Red Ward those who demonstrate years of cooperation earn additional privileges beyond the standard routine. Based on the accounts of those few who have visited Dreadhold, these privileges make eternal confinement marginally more bearable, though they remain privileges that can be revoked instantly for infractions. Recreation periods provide opportunities for exercise and limited social interaction under heavy supervision. The Gold Ward houses prisoners who require special consideration, but not quite the extreme isolation of the deepest cells. This ward contains inmates whose crimes were severe, but whose current threat level allows for somewhat less restrictive confinement than the deep ward provides. General Haldren of Aundair, convicted of wartime atrocities after a Thronehold tribunal inquiry, resides in the Gold Ward. Many officers in the military of Aundair remain sympathetic to Haldren and see him as the embodiment of what a soldier should be. Though his slaughter of civilians during the last war earned him permanent imprisonment, the Stone Ward exists for prisoners too dangerous to allow any freedom whatsoever, yet for whom execution remains impossible or undesirable. House Cannith provides a solution through stone mist, a magical substance produced through carefully controlled arcane processes. The mist transforms flesh to stone through a spell that turns the prisoner into a statue. Guards then transport these petrified inmates to secure vaults. Currently, the Stone Ward holds petrified inmates whose crimes or capabilities made even conventional imprisonment insufficient. Some chose this fate voluntarily, asking to be turned to stone rather than face centuries of consciousness in a cell. Others had the choice made for them by judicial decree or practical necessity. Only the Lord Warden of Dreadhold can perform the stone to flesh spell to release a petrified prisoner, and he might require a day to prepare the spells he needs. The house maintains detailed records of every petrified prisoner, ensuring that their status remains documented and monitored. The Deep Ward represents the ultimate expression of Dreadhold's purpose. Located beneath the prison, accessible only through a single path, this level holds the most dangerous inmates on the island. A shaft extends 100 feet into the earth, its smooth walls coated with grease. A levitating metal cage allows travelers to move between the two levels, but the controls for the cage reside in the observation post at the top of the shaft. The matrite on duty does not allow the cage to return to the surface if there are any signs of trouble in the lower staging area. No light sources exist in the Deep Ward, and inhabitants without dark vision are forced to wander blindly. There are 100 cells, and prisoners are generally held one to a cell. Over the centuries, a number of the cells have been imbued with magic to counter abilities prisoners might possess. Spellcasters might be bound in heavy hand manacles and placed in silent cells, chambers bathed in magical silence that prevent any sound from entering or leaving. There is no recreation or work for those in the deep ward. They remain in their cells for the duration of their sentences, which in Dreadhold means forever. Food and water are passed into the chambers through narrow passages with 2 locked doors, so the prisoner never has direct access to the outside. Even if an inmate does escape from their cell, a number of physical doors and walls of force divide the halls, creating multiple barriers between any escaped prisoner and freedom. Currently, 40 living prisoners reside in the deep ward. There are also 6 petrified prisoners, individuals deemed too dangerous to be trusted even to the stone ward's standard security. These 6 represent threats so profound that House Kundarak decided they must remain unconscious stone even in the most secure location the prison possesses. The deep ward also contains a nexus with 3 extra-dimensional vaults. These can be attuned to the Kundarak vault system, allowing many of the prison's supplies to be delivered through these vaults. If the prison comes under attack, this system could suggest the dwarves have contingency plans for passing the most valuable items to other Kundarak facilities through these special vaults. Among the deep ward's most infamous inmates dwells Cotheril the Harvester, a 30-hit dice radiant idol who literally cannot be destroyed. This fallen angel was imprisoned in what the records call a dead cell, a specialized containment designed specifically for beings who resist all forms of permanent death. The cell sits in the Lamanian manifest zone, where the planar energy makes stone harder than steel and steel chains harder than adamantine. We will explore Cotherill's full story in greater depth later, but understanding that such a being resides here demonstrates the scale of threats Dreadhold was built to contain. Upon arrival at Dreadhold, new prisoners undergo thorough processing regardless of which ward will house them. Artificers scan for hidden magical items, for concealed weapons, for anything that might aid escape. They strip away everything. Prisoners enter their assigned cells, possessing nothing that could be turned into a tool or weapon. The examination also establishes baseline understanding of each prisoner's capabilities. This information enters the prisoner's file, creating a profile guard's reference whenever that inmate displays unexpected behavior. Your journey into Dreadhold has only begun. The fortress itself, impressive as it stands, exists merely as a container. The real story lies in the souls trapped within those walls, in the crimes that brought them here, in the lives they destroyed, and the chaos they unleashed. Some were monsters from their earliest choices. Others became monstrous through specific acts and allegiances. A few might occupy a more ambiguous position, their imprisonment raising questions about justice versus political expedience that have no comfortable answers. Understanding who these forgotten inmates were requires examining them not as a collective, but as individuals. Each one arrived at Dreadhold through their own path. Each one committed acts or posed threats that marked them as requiring permanent containment. And each one now faces eternity behind walls designed to hold anyone forever, without exception or mercy. Section 2. The genius who chose chaos, Castel de Caneth. The youngest member ever admitted to the 12 sat in his workshop, surrounded by components that would have baffled artificers 3 times his age. Castel de Caneth had just turned 11 years old. The 12, that prestigious organization where the greatest minds of the dragon-marked houses collaborate and compete, had admitted him at an age that sparked controversy among the senior members. Within a few years, it became clear his talent outstripped the senior members of the Institute. He produced constructs and items of artifact quality, creations that other artificers found impossible to duplicate. Born in 645 year of the kingdom, Castel entered a world already shaped by the dragon-marked houses. House Caneth had spent centuries establishing itself as the premier manufacturer, the greatest innovators, the visionaries who transformed theoretical magic into practical reality. The lightning rail connected cities because Caneth artificers designed it. Ever-bright lanterns lit the streets because Caneth Magrites perfected the enchantments. When nations needed weapons, needed tools, needed anything that required the marriage of magic and matter, they turned to the House of Making. His mark of making manifested during his youth, marking him as an heir of House Caneth with the dragon mark that would enable his greatest achievements and his most terrible crimes. Based on what we know of dragon mark manifestation, this would have occurred during his childhood or early adolescence, confirming his potential to the house leadership. House Caneth recognized his exceptional abilities and provided him with opportunities that most artificers never received. The 12 came calling when he turned 11. This organization, formed centuries earlier after the War of the Mark, represented the pinnacle of dragon-marked achievement. Each of the dragon-marked houses contributed their finest minds to this collaborative venture. Here, artificers of House Caneth worked alongside healers of House Jarasco, worked alongside Windrites of House Lyrendar, worked alongside scholars from every other house. They tackled projects too ambitious for any single house to manage alone. Admitting an 11-year-old to the 12 sparked controversy, though the sources do not preserve the specific details of the debate. What remains clear is that Castel's admission was approved, and within a few years, his talent became undeniable. He produced constructs and items that demonstrated capabilities beyond what conventional artifice theory predicted. Castell claimed to receive his inspiration from the Traveler. This deity technically counted among the Dark Six, but considered separate from their pure malevolence, embodied chaos and change. The Traveler appeared in countless forms, never revealing a true face, never following predictable patterns. Stories portrayed the Traveler as the giver of gifts, the wandering stranger who offered boons to those it encountered. But warnings accompanied these stories. Beware the gifts of the Traveler, for what seems beneficial might carry hidden costs. Castell became enthralled with the Traveler and claimed this enigmatic deity provided his inspiration. His colleagues at the 12 apparently tolerated this unusual devotion, perhaps dismissing it as the quirks of genius that they should accept for the sake of his contributions. We can infer from later events that this tolerance proved catastrophic, that the signs of his growing instability went unrecognized or were rationalized away by those who benefited from his work. The disasters began in 662 year of the kingdom. The canonical sources describe these events as terrors, but provide limited specifics about their exact nature. What we know with certainty is that Castell unleashed chaos across Corvair, that his actions caused sufficient devastation to unite normally rival organizations against him, and that the scale of destruction convinced authorities that execution might be too merciful a fate. The 12 and the Arcane Congress joined forces to stop the terrors. This cooperation represented something extraordinary. The 12, sponsored by the dragon-marked houses, normally existed in competition with the Arcane Congress. The Arcane Congress had been established in 15 year of the kingdom by Galifar, the first specifically out of fear for the growing power of the dragon-marked houses. These two organizations rarely cooperated, viewing each other as rivals at best and threats at worst. That they united against Castell demonstrates the severity of his crimes. The artificers of the 12 brought practical knowledge of how his devices functioned, understanding his methods because they had worked alongside him for years. The wizards of the Arcane Congress contributed theoretical expertise about underlying magical principles. This could imply that Castell's terrors involved both artificial creations from his Cannith training and raw magical effects that required pure arcane understanding to counter. In 663 year of the kingdom, they brought Castell to justice. The canonical sources do not preserve details of his capture, though we can infer it required significant effort given his genius and the resources he presumably had at his disposal. The trial that followed created complicated legal and philosophical questions. The advocates of House Cannith convinced the others not to kill Castell, arguing they might need his uncanny abilities again in the future. This argument reveals something about how the houses viewed even their most dangerous members, as assets too valuable to permanently destroy, even when their crimes warranted execution. The compromise sentenced him to the stone ward of Dreadhold, where he would be petrified through carefully controlled application of stone mist. House Cannith provides the stone mist used for petrification at Dreadhold, a substance produced through arcane processes the house guards carefully. The technique allows transformation of flesh to stone, creating statues that can theoretically be stored indefinitely and revived when circumstances demand. Castell underwent this transformation in 663 year of the kingdom, entering the stone mist chamber conscious and emerging as an unconscious statue that guards then moved to a secure vault. The sources confirm that guards of Dreadhold have revived Castell twice in the past 3 centuries. The specific circumstances that prompted these revivals remain classified or undocumented in available sources. What we know is that both times involved situations where his unique knowledge or abilities were deemed necessary to address crises that conventional solutions could not resolve. The second revival nearly resulted in his escape. This near escape was serious enough that House Kundarak subsequently issued an absolute prohibition against ever reviving him again. The details of what occurred remain restricted, but the canonical sources emphasize that given enough time, Castell can turn any situation to his advantage. This suggests he used the brief period of consciousness during his second revival to implement an escape plan that came dangerously close to succeeding. Anyone who revives him takes a terrible chance. If Castell escapes, he could prove a danger to all of Corvair. This assessment, preserved in official Dreadhold records, indicates that authorities consider his threat level to be continental in scope, affecting not just individual nations, but civilization itself. Castell remains in the Stone Ward now, has remained there since his last revival centuries ago. Over the course of the last 300 years, since his initial imprisonment, he has experienced only those 2 brief periods of consciousness during his revivals. The rest of that time, assuming petrification truly suspends awareness, passed as instantaneous transition from one moment to the next. The canonical sources identify Castell as an Artificer 18/heir of Cyberes II, indicating he possesses not just the standard mark of making, but a Cyberes mark, the most powerful form of dragon mark. These marks appear extremely rarely, perhaps once in a generation per house, and grant abilities far beyond what lesser marks provide. This exceptional power, combined with his genius intellect and devotion to the traveler's chaotic philosophy, made him uniquely dangerous. The question that troubles those who study Dreadhold's most dangerous inmates is whether petrification truly contains someone of Castel's capabilities. The official position maintains that consciousness ceases during the transformation, that petrified prisoners experience no awareness of their imprisonment. But given Castel's demonstrated ability to exploit any situation, some worry that he might have found ways to maintain partial consciousness within the stone, spending centuries planning his next move, waiting for the day when someone desperate or foolish enough decides they need his help one more time. Castel de Canith represents a particular type of tragedy. Genius corrupted by devotion to principles that value change over stability, chaos over order. Admitted to the 12 at 11 years old, hailed as one of the most brilliant artificers House Canith ever produced, he chose to serve the traveler's vision rather than use his gifts for the benefit of civilization. And for that choice, he spends eternity as stone in a vault beneath Dreadhold, neither alive nor dead, existing in suspension between states, a monument to potential wasted, and the price that such waste demands from those who threaten all of Corvair with their actions. Section 3. The Harvester's Endless Vigil, Cotherel's Tale. Angels do not fall by accident. The celestial courts of Serenia, that plain of eternal azure skies and floating towers, maintain standards that transcend mortal understanding of justice. When an angel commits crimes severe enough to warrant expulsion from Serenia itself, when the immortal lords of that realm unite in judgment and cast one of their own into the material world, you can be certain that what follows will reshape the lives of countless mortals in ways both terrible and profound. Radiant idols represent a specific type of fallen angel, beings that have been banished from Serenia and condemned to spend eternity on the material plane. Not all radiant idols are evil, and none are as thoroughly corrupt as the fiends of the lower planes. Their greatest sin, as a rule, is the desire to be worshipped by the humanoids they consider lesser beings. Most gather cults of devoted humanoid followers on the material plane, thus giving rise to their common name. Cotherel claims to be a lord of death, the right hand of the dark god known as the Keeper. Whether this claim held any truth remains uncertain even now, centuries after the angel's fall. What cannot be denied is that Serenia expelled Cotherel, banishing it to Eberron for crimes the celestial courts refuse to discuss. That banishment came in 710 year of the kingdom. Cotherel soon established a cult of murderers who harvested innocent lives in its name. The cult operated with the devotion that comes from direct interaction with the source of their faith, whether compelled by blood oath or freely chosen. Radiant idols possess the ability to perform a ritual of initiation that binds cult members to their service. forging a magical mental bond between the idol and those mortals who participate. This ritual requires 24 hours of preparation, during which time the idol must meditate and ready a room in which the ritual will take place. The cult that formed around Catherl spread across central Corvair. Members believed they served death itself, that by harvesting innocent lives, they enacted cosmic necessity. The cult taught that some people deserved death, that recognizing and delivering that death represented a holy duty. For 23 years, the cult terrorized populations. Local authorities captured individual members, executed them for their crimes. But the cult always recruited more, and Catherl remained hidden, directing operations from sanctuaries protected by fanatical followers. The Knights of Dal Ara, paladins devoted to the sovereign of war and honor, finally tracked Catherl to Metral in 733 year of the kingdom. Metral, the capital of Sire, thrived as one of Corvair's most prosperous cities at that time. Centuries before the morning would transform it into cursed ruins. The battle that followed shook the foundations of Metral itself. The conflict between divine and martial power clashed with force that left lasting marks on the city. Eventually, through sacrifice and determination, the knights brought down the radiant idol. But death would not take the harvester. After all efforts to destroy, Catherl came to naught. Those who defeated it brought the fallen angel to Dreadhold. This inability to destroy Catherl reflects a fundamental truth about immortals in Eberron. They cannot be permanently destroyed. Notably, when an idol is destroyed and reforms, it is still a radiant idol. If their corruption could be undone by death, they would be killed instead of cast out of Serenia. Canonically, the radiant idol Catherl, the Harvester, is sealed in Dreadhold because while it was defeated, it simply could not be destroyed. This distinguishes Catherl from most other prisoners in the facility. Execution would end many threats, but Catherl represents a being for whom death provides no solution. The authorities imprisoned Catherl in a dead cell. These specialized containment units exist in very limited numbers within Dreadhold. There are only 6 dead cells, and currently no artificers or wizards in House Kundarak can reproduce this effect. Dead cells lie within the radius of an anti-magic field, reserved for magical beings that cannot be bound any other way. Catherl's cell specifically sits in the Lamanian Manifest Zone. The prison of Dreadhold is built in such a manifest zone. Not only is the stone of the region denser than usual, it cannot be penetrated by scrying or teleportation. This planar connection to Lamania, the Twilight Forest, makes the stone walls harder than steel, and the steel chains that bind Catherl even stronger. Multiple anti-magic field wards overlap in Catherl's cell, maintained by dwarves bearing the mark of warding. who rotate shifts to ensure no gap ever opens in the magical defenses. Cothrell remains blindfolded and gagged at all times, preventing it from seeing guards it might mentally influence or speaking words that might corrupt those who listen. The radiant idol stands about 9 feet tall and glows with inner light, with bloody stumps where wings once existed jutting awkwardly from its back. These are kept perpetually covered and restrained. Within this cell, Cothrell remains. The blindfold and gag never come off, except during brief, carefully supervised moments when the fallen angel receives water. Guards check on the cell regularly, confirming that the prisoner remains secured, that the wards hold steady, that no sign of escape attempt has manifested. These guards receive extensive psychological training because spending time near Cothrell tests mental fortitude in ways that ordinary imprisonment never could. The canonical sources identify Cothrell as a 30-hit dice radiant idol, indicating exceptional power far beyond the base challenge rating of 11 that most radiant idols possess. In the original 3rd edition statistics, Cothrell literally could not be destroyed, possessing regeneration and immunities that made permanent elimination impossible. This exceptional resilience, combined with its centuries of experience and supernatural abilities, makes it one of the most dangerous beings ever contained in Dreadhold. Despite these restrictions, Cothrell provides characters with a chance to talk to a powerful outsider under controlled circumstances. The fallen angel possesses knowledge that few beings in Eberron can match. Occasionally, petitioners are granted audience with the prisoner under conditions of absolute security. These meetings presumably occur with the petitioner speaking through barriers, never seeing Cothrell directly, never entering the cell itself. A guard would remove the gag, stand ready to replace it instantly if the fallen angel says anything that might represent an attempt at manipulation or escape. The cult itself did not immediately disappear with Cothrell's imprisonment, though the canonical sources provide limited information about its ultimate fate. Based on what we know of cult dynamics in Eberron, faithful believers likely continued operations for some time afterward, convinced their master would eventually be freed. The direct magical bonds created through the blood oath ritual would have persisted, maintaining cult cohesion even without Cothrell's direct leadership. However, over the centuries since 733 year of the kingdom, the cult appears to have fragmented or been eliminated, as no contemporary sources describe active harvester cultists. The fallen angel represents something uniquely terrible among Dreadhold's inmates, a prisoner for whom death would be mercy, but whom death refuses to claim. Execution would end Castel's threat, would eliminate any possibility of his genius ever again threatening civilization. But Cotheril cannot be executed. Immortals in Eberron reform after destruction, and radiant idols remain corrupted even after reformation. The only solution is permanent containment, eternal vigilance, perpetual imprisonment with no hope of conclusion. Cotheril endures now, has endured for over 2.5 centuries, since its defeat in 733 year of the kingdom. Chained in darkness, silent behind its gag, aware behind its blindfold, immortal and therefore condemned to experience every moment of its imprisonment, every second of every hour of every day of every century. Death cannot release it. Time cannot diminish it. It will stand in that cell until the end of the world itself, unless the world ends first, unless Dreadhold falls and chaos claims Corvair. Section 4. 30 Years of Silence, Briar the Greensinger's Tragedy. Not every inmate of Dreadhold earned their cell through monstrous acts or service to powers that should never be served. Some arrived through more complicated paths, through choices that seemed heroic to thousands, but threatened the interests of those who held power. Understanding these prisoners requires examining not just what they did, but what their actions represented, what forces they challenged, and why those forces found permanent imprisonment more convenient than any alternative. The Eldin Reaches, that vast expanse of ancient forest in northwestern Corvair, has always maintained an uncomfortable relationship with the rest of civilization. For centuries, the region existed as the western edge of Ondair, technically subject to that nation's laws, but practically governed by its own customs and traditions. The druids of the Wardens of the Wood held influence that predated Galifar's founding, that reached back to times when humanity had barely established itself in Corvair. During the last war, chaos erupted in the western farmlands that would become the Eldin Reaches. In the north, bandits from the Shadow Crags poured across the borders, ravaging the countryside. In the south, Brellish troops crossed the Silver Lake to occupy towns and territories. In 956 year of the kingdom, the Wardens of the Wood rallied the farmers and peasants, crushing the bandit army before it knew what was happening. With order restored in the north, the Wardens turned their attention to the south. And in 959 year of the kingdom, they finally succeeded in driving the Brellish forces back across the lake. Angry at the Ondarian crown for abandoning them during these crises, the people swore allegiance to the great druid, breaking all ties with the lords of Ondair. Since 958 year of the kingdom, the people of the Eldin Reaches have considered themselves to be part of an independent nation, and they were finally recognized as such with the signing of the Treaty of Thronehold in 994 year of the kingdom. Briar the Greensinger spent decades wandering the eastern Eldine reaches and Ondare, raising spirits and encouraging the farmers and plainsfolk to rise up against the absentee nobles. His actions set the wheels of secession in motion, ultimately resulting in the Great Split of 958 year of the kingdom. Based on what the canonical sources describe, Briar appears to have been one of the voices that convinced common people they could and should resist Ondarian authority, that they deserved better than rule by distant nobles who cared nothing for their welfare. Even after the secession, Briar was not satisfied. He continued to roam the borders, darting into Ondare and embarrassing the queen with his words and deeds. This persistent agitation against Ondare, this willingness to continue challenging Queen Orala's authority, even after independence had been achieved, ultimately sealed his fate. The crown devoted considerable resources to capturing the insurgent. In 968 year of the kingdom, he was brought to justice by Ondarian forces. The sources describe him being captured and brought to justice, but provide no details about the specific charges or the nature of his trial. What we know with certainty is that Queen Orala faced a dilemma. Briar was a folk hero, and his execution might make him a martyr. This could imply that executing him would have risked inflaming the very populations he had encouraged to resist Ondarian authority, potentially creating more problems than it solved. Instead, he was sent to Dreadhold, where he sits in a magically silent cell. The Ondarian treasury funds his imprisonment there, suggesting this represents an Ondarian political decision rather than a broader determination by multiple nations. The punishment imposed goes beyond mere imprisonment. Briar resides in a cell bathed in magical silence, one of the specialized containment units that prevent any sound from entering or leaving. Spellcasters at Dreadhold are often bound in heavy hand manacles and placed in silent cells to prevent them from casting spells with verbal components. But for Briar, the silence serves another purpose entirely. He has not heard a sound in 30 years. The sources, writing from approximately 998 year of the kingdom, confirm this duration. 30 years of absolute auditory deprivation, unable to hear his own voice, unable to hear footsteps or wind or any reminder that a world exists beyond his cell. For someone known as the Greensinger, for someone whose power and influence came through song and words, this silence represents a punishment specifically tailored to destroy everything that made him who he was. A lesser man might have been driven mad by this experience. The canonical sources acknowledge this explicitly, recognizing the psychological devastation that such sensory deprivation inflicts. But Briar can still hear music in his head, giving him the strength to carry on. This suggests that despite 3 decades of silence, some core part of his identity persists, that the songs continue even when they cannot be expressed or shared. The case raises uncomfortable questions about the nature of justice and political expedience. Breyer's crime appears to have been encouraging common people to resist authority, to challenge the structures that kept them subjugated. After independence was achieved, he continued his agitation, embarrassing Queen Orala and presumably threatening Ondarian interests in the border regions. These actions, while inconvenient to Onder's monarchy, do not obviously rise to the level that would typically warrant imprisonment in Dreadhold. The canonical sources provide no information about how Breyer's admission to Dreadhold was approved, or what process determined his fate. We know only that Queen Orala wanted him imprisoned rather than executed, that Onder pays for his continued containment, and that he ended up in one of the most secure prisons in all of Corvair. This could imply political maneuvering behind the scenes, arrangements that allowed Onder to remove a persistent problem without creating a martyr. The sources from the frontiers of Eberron material present a different Breyer, described as a young, non-binary elf and greensinger druid, who serves as a guide and an ambassador, traveling across frontiers to entertain and help people. This Breyer is described as trustworthy and beloved by village children, someone whose sole motivation is to be a part of the stories that are unfolding in the region and to ensure that they end well. This portrayal contrasts sharply with the imprisoned agitator in Dreadhold, suggesting either that different Greensingers exist with the same name, or that Breyer's story has multiple interpretations depending on which sources you trust. The title Greensinger itself appears to represent a role or tradition rather than a unique individual. Other Greensingers appear in the sources, including Greensinger Quadir, who serves the Archfey known as the Forest Queen. This raises the possibility that the imprisoned Breyer represents one manifestation of this tradition, that multiple individuals have carried the name and the role across different times and places. Regardless of these ambiguities, the Breyer imprisoned in Dreadhold faces a fate that may be psychologically worse than Castel's petrification, or even Cotherill's chains. Petrification at least provides unconsciousness, allows time to pass without awareness. Cotheril, despite being blindfolded and gagged, can at least hear the world around it, can know that existence continues beyond its cell. Breyer experiences every second of his silence, every minute of isolation, every hour of wondering whether anyone still remembers him, whether anyone still sings the songs he taught them, whether the movements he helped inspire continue in the world outside. Guards who monitor the silent cells report that Breyer spends his time writing, though the sources do not provide extensive detail about this activity. We can infer that the prison provides parchment and ink, not out out of kindness, but because giving prisoners something to occupy their minds reduces the risk of complete psychological breakdown. Based on what we know of Briar's nature and abilities, he likely writes songs, composes ballads that he will never be able to sing, creates musical notations for melodies he cannot hear even in his own imagination. Because the silence ward prevents all sound. 30 years have passed since Briar entered that silent cell in 968 year of the kingdom. The sources writing around 998 year of the kingdom confirm he remains there still. The folk songs that once celebrated him have presumably faded from common memory in both the Eldin Reaches and Ondare. New generations know the name only as historical footnote, if they know it at all. The political conflicts that once made him dangerous have evolved or been resolved through other means. Yet Briar remains in his cell, experiencing silence that has lasted longer than some wars, that has stretched across decades, while the world outside moved forward without him. The magical light cycles through its false day and night. The walls remain stone. The silence remains absolute. And somewhere far above, in the forests of the Eldin Reaches, trees grow tall and birds sing freely, filling the world with sounds that Briar the Greensinger will never hear again. Section 5. Forever behind these walls. Time moves differently within Dreadhold. Not in any magical sense, not through temporal manipulation or planar distortion, but through the psychological weight of knowing that tomorrow will be identical to today, that next year will mirror this year, that decades and centuries stretch ahead without variation or hope of change. For the inmates dwelling in those stone cells, whether in the relative comfort of the Red Ward or the absolute isolation of the Deep Ward, every sunrise that they cannot see marks another day in an existence that will never end through natural means. You might wonder what fills the hours for those condemned to eternal imprisonment. The answer depends entirely on which ward contains them and what privileges, if any, they have earned or retained. In the Red Ward, where up to 300 prisoners can be housed, though current population hovers around 200, inmates experience something that resembles routine. They wake when magical lights brighten in their cells, mimicking dawn. They receive their first meal, sustenance that provides adequate nutrition but no pleasure. Those assigned to work duty get escorted in small groups to wherever House Kundarak has decided they will labor that day. The work itself serves dual purposes. Obviously, it maintains the prison, keeps the massive facility functional, handles tasks that would otherwise require House Kundarak to employ additional staff. But the deeper purpose runs psychological. Work occupies the mind, provides structure, gives prisoners something to focus on besides the crushing reality of their situation. Without this occupation, the psychological pressure of eternal confinement would break even the strongest minds far more quickly. Work typically involves small groups chained together, mining below Dreadhold. The canonical sources confirm that Kyber dragon shards are erratically produced from these mining operations. Depending on their talents, prisoners might perform other forms of menial or even skilled labor. A workshop in the ward allows trusted prisoners to practice their trades. Any large work detail is accompanied by a wand guard, an elite guard, 2 guards, a scout, and a slaughterstone eviscerator. These constructs serve as tireless guardians that cannot be bribed, seduced, or convinced to look the other way. Trusted prisoners in the Red Ward, those who demonstrate years of cooperation, earn additional privileges. They are allowed to spend up to 12 hours per day out of their cells. They gain access to a library, though the canonical sources note the books are carefully curated. A luxurious bathhouse offers them hot water and steam. Other assorted recreational facilities provide space for activities that make eternity marginally more bearable. Security, however, remains tight even for these trusted inmates. Dwarf guards and slaughterstone eviscerators patrol the ward constantly. Disruptions are dealt with swiftly, and troublesome prisoners might lose their privileges or be reassigned to another ward. The Stone Ward operates under different principles entirely. Here, 175 prisoners currently reside in petrified form, their consciousness suspended. Additionally, 32 voluntary sleepers have chosen this fate, paying House Kundarak to keep their petrified bodies safe while they sleep away years or decades. This reveals an interesting aspect of Dreadhold's operations. The facility functions not just as a prison, but as a secure storage location for those wealthy enough to afford its services. A petrified character in the Stone Ward receives all the benefits the Lamanian Manifest Zone provides to stone objects. The planar energy that makes stone denser than usual, that prevents scrying and teleportation, also protects and preserves these statues in ways conventional petrification might not. Only the Lord Warden can perform the stone to flesh spell to release a petrified prisoner, and he might require a day to prepare the spells he needs. This restriction ensures that no unauthorized revivals occur, that every awakening from stone sleep happens under controlled circumstances. A single slaughterstone eviscerator patrols the Stone Ward, along with a minimal force of guards. This reduced security reflects the nature of the threat. Petrified prisoners cannot escape on their own, cannot influence guards or coordinate with outside allies. The primary security concern involves preventing unauthorized individuals from accessing the vaults and attempting to revive or steal the statues. The deep ward houses 40 living prisoners and 6 petrified ones. These represent the most dangerous inmates in all of Dreadhold. Individuals whose threat level exceeds what even the Red Ward's substantial security can adequately contain. There is no recreation or work for those in the Deep Ward. They remain in their cells for the duration of their sentences, which in Dreadhold means forever. Food and water are passed into the chambers through narrow passages with 2 locked doors, so the prisoner never has direct access to the outside. This ingenious design prevents any opportunity for inmates to attack delivery personnel, to attempt bribery or corruption, or to exploit the brief moments when sustenance arrives. The prisoners of the Deep Ward exist in near total isolation, experiencing human contact only through these carefully controlled food deliveries. No light sources exist in the Deep Ward, and inhabitants without dark vision are forced to wander blindly in their cells. This suggests a deliberate cruelty, though House Kundarak would likely argue it represents practical security. Guards with dark vision can move through the darkness freely, maintaining advantage over prisoners who cannot see. The darkness also serves psychological purposes, adding sensory deprivation to the isolation, eroding the prisoner's sense of time and space. Over the centuries, a number of cells have been imbued with magic to counter abilities prisoners might possess. Spellcasters might be bound in heavy hand manacles and placed in silent cells, chambers bathed in magical silence that prevent any sound from entering or leaving. Based on what we know of Dreadhold's design philosophy, each specialized cell likely represents a response to specific escape attempts or identified vulnerabilities. As prisoners develop new methods of resistance, House Kundarak adapts the Deep Ward to counter those methods. Even if an inmate does escape from their cell, a number of physical doors and walls of force divide the halls. This creates multiple redundant barriers between any escaped prisoner and actual freedom. The entire Deep Ward can presumably be sealed with emergency protocols, trapping anyone inside until guards arrive in overwhelming force. This architectural approach reflects centuries of refinement, each layer of security representing lessons learned from previous incidents. The canonical sources do not document any successful escapes from Dreadhold in its entire operational history. This represents House Kundarak's greatest pride, the proof that their security systems work as designed. Most dwarves consider a tour of duty at Dreadhold to be tantamount to exile, given the bleakness of the place. But the bearers of the mark of warding make sure the prison stays secure despite this. However, defining success becomes complicated when examining the historical record. If a prisoner dies attempting escape, killed by guards or environmental hazards, or their own miscalculations, Does that represent successful containment? Or does death itself constitute a form of escape from imprisonment? The canonical sources do not address this philosophical question directly, focusing instead on the practical reality that no prisoner has ever regained freedom to act in the world beyond Dreadhold's walls. The guards who maintain this eternal vigil deserve consideration in any examination of Dreadhold's reality. These men and women, mostly dwarves bearing the mark of warding though other races serve as well, have chosen a profession that most dwarves view as exile. They stand watch over individuals who might have commanded armies, who might have slaughtered hundreds, who whisper promises of wealth or freedom or power if the guard would just make one small mistake. House Kundarak operates Dreadhold as a for-profit business. They evaluate every prisoner submitted to the facility, considering all risks associated with incarceration, including the challenges posed by the prisoner and risks associated with the prisoner's outside influence. If they decide to accept the prisoner, they set the cost of imprisonment. If the client agrees to those terms, they will maintain the incarceration until the client or their heirs cease payment or cancel the contract. This reveals an uncomfortable economic reality. Imprisonment in Dreadhold continues only as long as someone pays for it. Visitors are rarely welcome at Dreadhold. To gain access to a prisoner, a visitor must have an influential friend in House Kundarak, or the support of the government, or individual responsible for the prisoner's incarceration. The guards at the front observation post examine all visitors with arcane sight, and any weapons or suspicious magic items are confiscated for the duration of the visit. Changelings are required to strip and don bright, distinctive outfits provided by the prison, limiting the effectiveness of their shape-shifting powers. A spellbinder uses detect thoughts to study visitors, while a stone speaker questions them about the purpose of their visit and their race. Visitors are not allowed to enter the prison until the spellbinder is satisfied. If the guards have any concerns, a visitor might be forced to submit to bestow curse for the duration of the visit. A lawkeeper places the curse and removes it at the conclusion of the visit. These extensive precautions reflect House Kundarak's understanding that visitors represent potential security threats, that outside allies might attempt to facilitate escapes through seemingly innocent visits. The question of what the future holds for Dreadhold and its inmates has no simple answer. As long as civilization persists in Corvair, as long as nations produce criminals whose crimes exceed conventional punishment, the prison will continue serving its function. The Day of Mourning demonstrated that even the most powerful nations can be destroyed by forces they do not understand and cannot control. On 20 Olarun, 994 year of the kingdom, the entire nation of Sire was consumed in a magical holocaust of unknown origins. If such a disaster could consume an entire nation overnight, could turn prosperous Sire into the cursed wasteland now called the Mournland, perhaps similar destruction could claim Dreadhold. This possibility haunts House Kundarak's strategic planning, though the canonical sources provide no specific information about contingency protocols. Based on what we know of the house's obsessive approach to security, they likely maintain plans for evacuating key personnel if the prison becomes indefensible. They may have prepared final failsafes that would destroy the entire facility rather than allow mass escape. Though implementing such measures would require authorization from multiple house leaders simultaneously, they presumably coordinate with national governments about rapid response forces that could converge on Dreadhold if disaster strikes. Though whether any military could contain a full prison break remains uncertain. For almost 800 years, the dwarves expanded the prison, adding new levels and new warding spells. Architects added vaults to the fortress and magical workshops, where artificers and wizards could work on secretive projects of the house. Today, Dreadhold is an important enclave of House Kundarak, second only to the capital city of Corunda Gate. The western side of Dreadhold is devoted to house operations, including mystical workshops, luxurious living quarters for visiting nobles, and massive vaults for storing treasures of the house, its clients, and the personal belongings of inmates. The vaults connect to a nexus with 3 extra-dimensional spaces that can be attuned to the Kundarak vault system, allowing many of the prison's supplies to be delivered through these vaults. This could imply that if the prison comes under attack, the dwarves might use this system to evacuate valuable items or critical intelligence to other Kundarak facilities through these special vaults. The house's banking operations and security services extend far beyond Dreadhold, making it part of a continent-spanning network of financial and protective services. The weight of eternity presses down upon all inmates, regardless of their ward or their crimes. Castle stands frozen in his vault, has stood there for centuries since his last revival, neither alive nor dead, but suspended in stone that may or may not preserve some fragment of consciousness. Cotherl remains chained in its dead cell, blindfolded and gagged, experiencing every moment of imprisonment because immortals cannot escape through death. Briar sits in magical silence, writing songs that accumulate in parchment stacks, compositions for instruments that cannot be heard and may never be heard again. You have traveled now through Dreadhold's wards, through its history and its horrors, through the stories of those condemned to spend eternity behind its walls. You have met Castle, the genius who chose chaos, and now pays the price in endless stone sleep. You have encountered Cotherl, the fallen angel who cannot die, and therefore cannot escape the chains that bind it. You have heard Briar's silent song, the ballad of justice complicated by politics and power. These are the forgotten inmates, forgotten not because no one knows they exist, but because remembering them requires confronting uncomfortable truths about what civilization does with those it fears. Their stories matter because they remind us that the line between protection and oppression can blur, that the mechanisms we create to secure ourselves can serve multiple purposes, that eternity represents a punishment so absolute that even the worst crimes might not justify its imposition. Dreadhold endures. The walls remain strong. The wards hold steady. The guards maintain their watch despite the bleakness of their posting. And within those cells, behind those barriers, the forgotten inmates dwell in their eternal present, experiencing time not as progression toward any goal, but as endless repetition of sameness, as permanent suspension in a moment that never ends. If you found value in this journey through Dreadhold's depths, if these forgotten inmates and their stories resonated with you, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to this channel. Your support allows continued exploration of the deep lore that makes these worlds rich and complex, that transforms simple fantasy into something that reflects profound questions about justice, power, and the choices that define civilizations. Thank you for listening, and may your own paths never lead to cells from which there is no escape except through stone sleep or eternal chains.